let us get started. You are in, I'm going to call it tech law because that's what I've always called it. Last year it was called internet law. That just used to really upset me, internet law. What is that, like the law of shoes? It could mean anything. And now it's information technology, so law and information technology. I'm not going to emphasise the information part. We are going to talk about all kinds of technologies and all kinds of laws. For the first time, we get to welcome people who are not law students. So this, for those who are law students, does count as a law elective if you want it to. Well, in fact, all of them can count as, you can do as many law electives as you like, as long as you do the minimum number. I guess for the rest of you, it depends on your program. I don't know how this sits. Does mean that we've made a couple of little changes to some things for the law students, which might in fact make you happy. So, for example, the assessment criteria, while they will always include proper referencing, no longer require you to do that with HELC 3. You can use RMIT Harvard if you want to. Go party! Exciting. So, what are we going to talk about? This is me. I don't always have purple hair. That picture with the purple hair will probably go because it was a little bit of a protest vote on my part because I thought it was ridiculous that I had to do all these silly things, so I made them even sillier by putting in Canvas a picture of myself, in fact a GIF of me being kind of dicky. All of this information will be available on Canvas. Canvas is our brand new system for what's called a learning management system, LMS. It's replacing Blackboard. For many of you, this will be your first time playing with it. I've taught in it OUA for a semester. As is one of the things we'll probably end up talking about in this class. It has not been the easiest technical implementation ever. And as a consequence, yesterday was the first time that any of you got access to it, which meant, of course, that it was very difficult, in fact impossible to do preparation. Michael here has already pointed out to me that there are some things in it that I was not expecting to be there. Access to last year's slides. Feel free to have a look, that's fine. But I will be updating the slides every week or every class. And also this course is very much built around what's happening right now and a series of guest speakers. So we'll have 2 guest speakers this weekend, both of them really focusing on how technology is changing the way we practice law. And we look at law and information technology from those 2 lenses. One is the world is changing, there are new technologies. What is the role of regulation? What is the role of lawyers in dealing with the way the law is changing? But we also turn it back on ourselves and say, ask ourselves, how does the way that technology is changing impact the practice of law itself? And particularly, what does it mean for you guys coming out into the profession, for those of you who are, going forward? So it turns out I can be cranky in an email occasionally. I'm usually pretty quick to respond to people. If it's urgent, please put urgent in the header or send me a text or something, because if I don't respond straight away or don't pick up the phone straight away, that's usually because I've got something else to do. I'm one of those people who gets very anxious with a long to-do list, so I usually kind of try and turn it over pretty quickly. But having said that, I think the person I'm actually talking to is more important than the person that I didn't make a plan to have bring me. So I will ignore your calls if I'm doing something else that I need to do. So just send me a text or something about what it is. If you're stressed, I don't want you to be stressed. What else is there? I'm going to have lots of different communication channels here. Some of you will have noticed that participation is a requirement for this course. I will talk about that. But don't worry, for those of you who don't like putting up your hand and talking to people, there are lots of different ways to participate. And in fact, the key way, the main thing that I will use to assess your participation In fact, I'm going to mark it anonymously. So you can wonder how I do that for a moment. I want to start off just talking about this. We will have a number of guest presenters. They will vary across disciplines, and we'll talk about a range of different things. I work really hard to get some really good presenters, and I want them to come in and talk to you as friends and colleagues and as openly as they possibly can. That means not all of our guest speakers will be prepared to be recorded. And it also means that we need to stick by Chatham House rules. Now, Chatham House rules is an expression some of you might have heard before, gets bandied around a lot. People tend to think it means I have to keep it a secret. Doesn't mean that at all. It means this. This comes from the Chatham House rulebook. And essentially the rule says information that's disclosed during a meeting may be reported by those present, but the source of the information may not be explicitly or implicitly identified. Oh, I can see it up there. That's going to cross my neck. That's going to make my life so much better. Okay, so when we talk about Chatham House rules, we don't have to not talk about the thing that was said. We just don't identify our source. Okay, I have some expectations of you. A number of you have been in classes with me before, so many of these things you will have seen before. I like to start and finish on time. If you're late, don't let that stop you from walking in, but don't expect me to wait for you. Even if there's none of you, I will just start talking because, it's all about me. I don't really want to be terribly formal. Like I said, there'll be, in theory, 28 of you. I don't think we need to put our hands up or stuff like that. I think we can just have a conversation. If I'm on a roll and you're trying to get in, I'll try and do something to say, I've acknowledged you, I'll get to you. I usually do. You mow me down, it works out all right. 12 hours a weekend is a lot of time. I want to make as little of it as possible you sitting around just listening to me being a talking head. I do need you to participate, but participation is a different thing for everybody. So acknowledge that. And when I'm assessing participation, one of the things I will also be looking for is, did you recognise when other people needed to have a say? Recordings, I will make recordings, I get it. This weekend, what a beautiful day it is. People have stuff on. I reckon our half timetable is to get out of family Christmas parties, but I get it that most of you don't necessarily want to get out of your Christmas stuff. We can manage around that. The participation part is important, and you will be working in groups. So you need to negotiate with your groups what your outcomes are going to be in relation to that. Talked about Chatham House rules already. This one I'm just putting separately because I'm completely embarrassed that you haven't had the opportunity to do pre-reading, and a number of you were asking for that, and it was just not possible with the rollout to do that in any meaningful or useful way. So I'm actually teaching 4 classes over summer. The technology issue has been absolutely huge. That is not an excuse. I am just trying to put myself in a situation where you can have some empathy for the situation that I've been in. And I will be adapting a bit over this weekend as we go, and I've changed some of the order of things I wanted to do around to make sure you've got plenty of time to read and prepare, particularly around the stuff that I think will be quite foreign to some of you. So next week in particular, we'll be looking at the blockchain, which for many people will be getting their head around how that works just takes a little bit of effort. So you will have time to do that. It's no longer on for today. So I would appreciate it if you do the reading. I work really hard to try and make sure that the reading is reasonable, because I know that if I piss you off by asking you to do too much reading and then it doesn't feel relevant, then you just won't keep doing it. So give me feedback too if that's becoming too difficult. Sorry, Michael.
I'm still looking, you said next week. I thought.
Oh, sorry, did I say next week? It's next fortnight. So we have 6. For those of you who haven't worked out what the calendar is, we have 6 days. We have 2 days this weekend. We skip a weekend. Another 2 days, skip a weekend, and another 2 days. So all of your attendance and most of your assessment tasks can be finished before Christmas. And if you want to, you can have the whole lot finished before Christmas. So that's just how it works. But we'll talk about the assessment tasks in a minute. Anything else? 48 hours. Phones and computers, I'm not a fan. I guess this is a line I've used many times. I was just saying to Paul before, and I can share it with you. There's plenty of brain science that shows handwriting notes means that you're more likely to retain information. If you really want to use your computers, please do. Please use them for taking notes. If you are shopping, Facebooking, watching porn, doing whatever it is that you do on your computers, could you please do that in the back row? Because the rest of us don't want to see it, and it's really disturbing. And I don't know what it is about me. I will walk around, and if you've got something that's not this on your screen, I'm like completely mesmerised by it. So lucky they're all put their backs to me. I do want you to have something that allows you to connect to the internet, because we will be using this Go Soapbox tool as a large part of our participation. Have any of you done anything with Go Soapbox before? You do us all. That's what I love. I'm going to ask you the question. What do you want to do about the slides? Turns out that there are slides in there already. Most of my experience is lots of students like to have the slides in advance. You want to print them out so you can scribble on them. Makes perfect sense. Does mean you get a little bit frustrated if I don't do them in the order. I think of the slides as being something for me to make sure that I cover everything that I said that I would cover, and to kind of keep me on some sort of track. But it's a bit like, have you ever been out with somebody and just like had to plan a conversation in advance? You know, like, I don't know, tell someone you're going to break up with them, tell your mother that she really needs to start using deodorant, like, I don't know, something. And you plan the conversation out in advance, but then actually when you have the conversation, it sort of takes a different tack from what you're expecting. And you get all your key messages out, but it doesn't necessarily naturally go in the order you want. Slides make it very difficult for me to have a conversation in a natural order. So I keep on moving them around. If I'm giving them to you in advance, chances are, this might surprise you, but I will look at them quite carefully in the 24 hours before I actually teach, think about some things, check some references, maybe have a different idea and update something, change the order depending on how I feel on the day or something that's happened in the news. So if I'm giving them to you in advance, there is a really good chance that they won't be identical to what you see, but it's kind of up to you. I'm not going to ask you to show of hands. We're going to have a practice when we do this Go Soapbox so that you can anonymously tell me what you want me to do about slides. So I leave you for that for a moment. Oops. Oh, anything else? Some of you have been in classes with me before. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Participation is online.
Yep.
Part of the.
That will be part of the assessment, part of the participation, as one of the options, one of the many options for participating. So, what my plan is here with this slide set is go through all this admin stuff and talk about the different assessment tasks. Then I want us to get to know each other a little bit today and to start a conversation about what the key issues might be that you guys want to do in your main assignments, what each of the different groups might want to have a look at. Our first guest speaker is a virtual guest speaker, so he's going to be joining us all the way from Geelong by a video conference later on today. And that's not until 2:30, so we've got plenty of time to get to there. And then I also want to talk about some jurisdiction issues and some governance of the internet issues. That's pretty much today in a nutshell. I'm going to look at the ceiling so I don't look at anybody in the room, but occasionally I tweet. Sometimes it gets me into trouble, sometimes it doesn't. Hopefully most people know I tweet with love and usually about things that amuse me. It's actually not, I tweet with the hashtag RMIT Tech Law quite a lot, have for a long time, and so often things that are interesting or relevant to this course, I will be providing links that way. That's something that you want to be involved in. Timing structure is going to vary a bit from day to day because we're going to work around our guest speakers. I found out when I arrived that we've got no catering today. I don't know whether you were expecting any catering today. I didn't really think about it. Chances are the fact I didn't think about it could be the reason we don't have any catering today, because I didn't actually follow it up. I'll try and make sure that we at least get some morning tea or afternoon tea going forward, and we'll see what we can do about that. I pretty much plan to have a full hour for lunch in the middle of the day, really to encourage you to get out into the sunshine, go for a walk. You can call it group work if you like. Again, last time I took a petition about halfway through to shorten that so that people could get away a bit earlier. But I've also, in response to feedback from the last time I ran this, last time I started at 10:30 and finished at 5:30, I moved it sort of half an hour earlier so we get there. The only reason I wanted to do that is so I could do park run. So if I get a little bit fatter over the next little while, it'll be your fault. Today, Fabian Horton is going to join us at 2:30. Fabian's a mate of mine. He's actually over at the College of Law, so many of you, or the lawyers, I think I've got the lawyers sort of over here, haven't I? Is that how it's worked? I'll work out who, oh, you're a lawyer. No, Will's a lawyer. I'll work out who the rest of you are as we go. I want to mix you guys up with the lawyers, though. Yes, you will have to work with your clients' lawyers, and you will have to work nicely. So Fabian's doing the PhD that I don't need to do. Oh, that's right, I didn't really introduce myself. So here's where you can start forming your complaints about me. I don't have a PhD. I have what is called, I've been granted what's called TESQUA 10 equivalency, which allows me to supervise and coordinate courses and teach everybody below PhD level. I have this, the equivalency is the equivalency to a PhD, and it's based on industry experience. In other words, I didn't get this grey hair out of a bottle, like I earned it the hard way. I have about very close to 30 years experience. I was admitted in 1989 as a lawyer. So I have held a practicing certificate continuously over that time. Well, obviously I did a number of years under supervision like everybody else did, but you know, I was admitted in New South Wales in '89, so I finished my law degree about a year before that. I had started off working actually in major projects, infrastructure projects largely, and through a very circuitous route ended up working largely in technology areas, first in private practice. Actually, really where I started to be exposed to technologies, I actually spent 3 years in an investment bank. I continued to maintain my practicing certificate. I was half in the compliance group and half in the projects group. This particular investment bank, which was owned by part of the Chinese government actually, and so we did a lot of projects in China, largely, this will show how old I am, in the lead up to the handover of Hong Kong in 1997. I'm not sure if any of you will remember, but bizarrely, lots of people were quite nervous about that and what that would mean. And so a lot of people who had investments in China at the time, particularly around technology, were really worried about how they were ever going to get their money out of China when Hong Kong became part of China. And so there was a lot of restructuring and investment both from Canada, or particularly from Canada and Australia, but a little bit more from the States as well. I did a lot of those kind of projects. Most of those people kind of regretted doing it pretty soon afterwards because they made a lot more money learning in China. And so we spent a bit of time undoing them in the early noughties. But I've basically been a geek my whole life. I used to go to the Tandy store near Sydney Station, sort of hang out in the back and hope that somebody would let me program some BASIC in an old TRS computer. Back in the day, it was very much a space then that girls couldn't play in, and believe it or not, I was very shy back then. So it's one of the lessons I learned was, probably because I don't code very well now, is that I probably should have put my hand up back then and said I'd like to learn more about this, but I felt uncomfortable doing so. The last close to 10 years ago, I've basically worked in-house. In fact, 2 different companies that I've been involved in setting up are listed. Both of them in the financial technology space. The first one of those, I worked in the company as its general counsel, and I was on the board of, so I was an ASX listed company director for a number of years. Long story short, we used our technology to launch a fund in the UK the Friday before Lehman Brothers collapsed. So our fund performance was really good compared to everyone else, but it was not a great time. And I was on the wrong side of a boardroom battle that saw me out of that company. And my business partner from that venture and I and a couple of the others, we've started another one since, which listed last year. Was, if you want to look it up, you will find it is one of the least well-performing stocks of the IPOs of 2016. And those of you who join me in ATM will hear me argue that success is a variable measure, and what your share price is worth is only relevant if you want to sell your shares or raise more money. Sadly, shortly we will need to raise more money, so I will fall across the lack of success side there. But in both of these companies, I've been involved in setting up from scratch a regulatory model for dealing with new technology. So in one sense, we were looking at how to use essentially the kind of tools that you use for big data processing to build a financial product from the bottom up. I can explain more if people are interested at some point. And with the second one, we're looking at crowdfunding any kind of large value asset. So we started with residential property. So we've created a pretty interesting platform for crowdfunding property. So basically, why am I saying all this? To hopefully demonstrate to you that I have some credibility in the technology space, and that I come to it very much as a business person. Now this, and most of the subjects I teach actually are unashamedly commercially focused. This one, it is possible for those of you who like to come to the law from the public law side. I would like to just, a little aside here, saying all my public law colleagues, I doubt that they say, now there is a way to do this as a commercial subject when they're teaching you human rights law or whatever it is that they teach you. But here I'm saying, yes, you can find a public law approach if you wish. And last year, one of the best projects that I saw was a group that looked at social media and small children. And they did some really interesting stuff around how you might educate schools and teachers in relation to both law and law reform with issues with social media and small children. But the reality is my approach and my first thought is, okay, how can we make money out of this? What's happening with new technologies? What does that mean for the way that we work? So at the moment, the two things that are really interesting me are shift to autonomous vehicles and what the regulatory impacts will be on a world that moves towards autonomous vehicles, which I think has a lot of breadth in it. I remain fascinated by the blockchain, and we can talk about this at great length, but when all of our models about how trusted intermediaries work, I don't know, show of hands, who trusts their bank? Yeah, do you trust your bank? Good. Do you trust your bank? At the end of the day, very few people will spontaneously say, I trust my bank. Yet, we have systems for moving money around that require a trusted intermediary. And the blockchain, you basically can remove the requirement for a trusted intermediary, but do we trust it? Because we actually replace this idea of trust by trusting nobody, just the records. I find that fascinating. I think there are lots of different interesting things we can do around that. Sorry, I will pause for breath eventually. All right, let's do a quick guide to assessment, just because this usually gets everybody's assessment on. That's a little hard to read, those colours, isn't it? It's all right, we'll have a slide about each of them. But there are basically 4 different things that you will need to do. One of them is due next week. You guys, over the course of this weekend, need to form groups, and each group is going to need to submit a scope. So what I'm looking for from the groups, I'll talk about the detail in a minute. You're going to basically pick your project. Let me talk more briefly about my logic with the assessment here. This is a subject where you do lots and lots of different things, and it's very much designed for you to be able to do and really do a deep dive in the thing that you're interested in. You get to do that big deep dive, but I also need to know that you've addressed each of the course learning outcomes and that you've got some breadth. So the way that we're doing that is you're going to get together in groups and pick a kind of subject area. I want you to work in those groups with a view to doing a presentation to the rest of us, which will inform us more deeply about the subject area that you've chosen. Then each group member will do a deep dive on one aspect of the thing that they're interested in. So you're going to go sort of narrow and then really narrow and deep. Then to get the breadth, this is my participation mark. So where I'm going to be looking for evidence that you've engaged with the breadth of the material as well. Okay? So that's the logic. So the 4 things are the scope, which is worth 10%. It's a short turnaround. It's not supposed to break you. It's just supposed to get you focused. You'll do a group presentation. People hate group presentations. I get it. Largely you hate it because you think you're awesome and everybody else in your group sucks. That's fine. Only half of your mark you will get because the other people in your group suck. Half of your mark will be because of your brilliant performance. And I'll talk about that later. And then there's this participation mark. Then I'll give you the detail, but I've thought very hard of ways that I can collect evidence that you've engaged with the materials. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the loudest person in the class, but hey, it would help if there was someone louder than me. And then 45% of your mark is your individual research report on one aspect of the things you did in your group. So when you're going into that, you will have the feedback from other members of your group about the subject matter that you're doing. You will have the work that you've done as a group. You will have the feedback from me and other members of the class on your group presentation. And so you'll be well placed to just do that. And as I said, all classes are finished before Christmas. That's not due, I think, until the first week of February. something like that anyway. So you've got plenty of time to just really go deep, if that's what you do. Or, you know, then there's always that last week when you come back from the beach. So, first deliverable, this is your project scope. 1 submission per group. Apparently Canvas has group functionality. We're going to work that out together today. I haven't seen it in action either. What will happen is when you form the groups, you'll be able to sign up to a group. I think the way it's set up, there will be a maximum of 5 people to a group. Given the numbers, I would rather that the groups are at least 3 than really small, but you can start talking to each other, and we'll do that opportunity over the course of the day. I would recommend, as much as it's ace to work with your mates, that what we do is that you find the topic you think you will be interested in and work with others who are interested in that topic, because it can be a long time, particularly when you're doing a research report by yourself, to spend on something that you're not interested in and you're only doing it because you randomly sat next to somebody in this class at the beginning. It's a good way to feel fitter. I have a number of different scenarios that we can talk about. At the scope stage, I'm not expecting you to know everything about that scenario. What we're looking for here is that the group has thought about, who might I advise? Now, because we've got a mixture here of lawyers and business people, I'm really hoping we end up with groups that have mixtures of lawyers and business people. I am really excited by the idea of you guys thinking of like being a startup, thinking of a technology that you're interested in and working out, well, what would you do? So one of the great projects last year was a group who decided that they would form a blockchain consulting firm. And they basically picked different areas of expertise that they were interested in. From memory, one looked at privacy issues, one looked at Bitcoin and the way that you might be investing on a blockchain. I can't actually remember now, it's all gone. But they looked at different aspects and they kind of presented as if they were selling their business, setting up their business. Plenty of opportunities to think about that, especially having some business people in the room to think about, you know, do I want to sell autonomous vehicles? Do I want to sell services to people who sell autonomous vehicles? Am I interested in Industry 4.0? Have any of you heard the term Industry 4.0? Okay, we can talk about that a little bit tomorrow, but the 4th industrial revolution, the information revolution, coined by the Germans about 3 or 4 years ago, and really to do with the interconnectedness of things. So the term Internet of Things is something that you might have heard, but also Internet of Things combined with artificial intelligence, where machines can fix and repair themselves, for example. Truly autonomous production lines. So there's lots of different things we can talk about. I will shortly give you some things to go and have a look at. Find a technology that inspires you. You reaching out or just waving your arms around? Put your arms in the air like you just don't care. Okay, so the idea of this is it makes you form a group. It makes you think about what technology you want to look at. It makes you come up with a plan for doing the work. You don't necessarily have to do the work. I just want you to come up with a plan for doing the work. Which gives me the opportunity to give you some feedback, point you in the direction of some resources, those kinds of things. So you don't need to solve the problem, but what you need to do is think about how you're going to solve the problem, or what the problem is. Group presentation. This will happen on Sunday the 17th of December, the very last day that we have. The exact amount of time that everybody will have will depend in part on how many groups we have, how that all settles out. I think past size looks pretty similar to last year. Essentially the way it worked is each group had, I think, 7 minutes a person, and I asked them to organise that so that they allowed about 10 minutes for question and discussion. So if you had, it kind of didn't work, we had one group, we had 2 people, so it was 14 minutes, so 10 minutes for question, really only gave them 2 minutes each to speak. That obviously needed to adjust a little. But when we had a couple of groups that were 5 or 6, it's quite a big presentation. But we'll get exact numbers when I know what the groups are. So, assessment criteria for the group presentations pretty much work like this. So there are 4 criteria. The demonstrated group effectiveness, or sort of 50% of it is your group performance and 50% is the rest, but it kind of overlap when you think about it. So your personal performance thing, the bit that is your slides or your speaking point, really needs you to demonstrate your research skills, to demonstrate the reasons, articulating what your problem, part of the problem is, why it matters, and what the solutions are to it, and your actual presentation skills. But the 50% that's your group kind of overlap in this sense, don't they? So group effectiveness will also go to things in a sense to your presentation skills, because I've been looking for something that looks consistent, that looks like it's been worked out by a group, that you're doing equal, you know, you're not just equally weighting things because that's each person taking their 25% in a group of 4 or something like that. It's about working out what is the most important part of the problem and addressing that, working it together. You'll have these shortly, so you can look at the detail of them. You will find now you can get into Canvas detailed rubrics with descriptions of what looks good, what I'm looking for in each category, so you should be able to plan. So the third deliverable is your individual report. So this isn't due until the 5th of February. There's a lot of time. You can do it sooner. I know you're very keen to get started. You can do it sooner rather than later. Maximum 4,500 words. That's a lot of words. You don't have to use them all. I really, really like to emphasize maximum. But I want you to do a deep dive, so I don't want you to be constrained by a word limit. Okay? For some of you, that ultimately is the tough thing. And basically, this is your key area of interest, and it's based on your report. Now, what happens, as sometimes does, if a decision that you make today actually turns out to be a narrower road than you thought it might be, either because there's just not enough in it for a research report, or because it turns out it's not as interesting as you thought it might be, or whatever. Rigid policy of absolute flexibility. This is what we want to do. Talk to me along the way. Things change, groups change, the dynamics shift. At the end of the day, I only care that you learn something. And my kind of Faustian bargain with you is I'll try and make it as interesting for you as I can, so that I just think when you've got good endorphins in your brain, you're more likely to actually retain some stuff. And I'm much more interested in how you think and how you analyse than you reporting or regurgitating information to me. Yeah.
What if you have an area of interest that is quite far removed from the stuff you're doing in your group project that you'd love to write a report?
If you don't bring them together, well, firstly, talk to me, because I'm pretty good at helping people bring things together in what might be interesting to you. But otherwise, if we can negotiate and you can do something completely separate. So if, for example, you are really keen on doing something about, I'm going to suggest things I'm keen on reading. So there's a lot of stuff happening at the moment with genetic technologies, where there's much more information than there's ever been about gene markers, and what the impact that is of that information being now available on the insurance market. So could insurers say no to insuring somebody who has a genetic marker? I'm thinking Gattaca, by the way, everything I do is inspired by pop media or anyway. So if I'd had time with this Canvas debacle, I was thinking of actually giving you a kind of pop culture reading and watching list. But yeah, if you're really interested in that and you're with a group of people and you're doing this fantastic report on artificial intelligence and the way that it's, maybe you've got a business amongst your group where you're going to do Spotify for legal advice. Like, how cool would that be? It's like you're in a situation, like you get, instead of your weekly playlist, it gives you
rental rights.
Yeah, your rental rights because you happen to be doing this or that. Something you want to set up a business to do, provide legal advice to people. I'm so bored with apps, but something like that, using some artificial intelligence solution, and how are you going to think about privacy and issues with that? If you want to do both, we can make it work. Sorry, what was that?
I'd love to listen to my rental rights on the tram at 7 a.m.
Well, you never know. Questions, concerns?
So there's been an area that is like established in the real world.
No.
So
It needs to.
possible.
It needs to link to the course learning objectives. So I'm whispering the word information. I can find information technology in pretty much any kind of technology. I'm not really interested in you doing something around, if we were to agree that a hammer is a form of technology, I'm not really interested in a research paper around OH&S issues with the use of toolboxes. I think we need to have some link to technology, and we need a link to a regulatory space. You ultimately convince me what those things are. So a new or emerging technology, many people will want to do some ethical issue stuff. So around whether or not, so one of the best papers I read last year was somebody who their group had looked at the dark web and the use of the dark web by child sex traffickers. And the paper that this person wrote really got me thinking, was about the ethics of using augmented reality in child sex pornography. So basically there's a project that's come out of the States through the Philippines where they have a augmented reality child who has basically been, I'm so not a criminal lawyer, what's the word? Entrapping. I want to use entrapping, but there is the non-illegal version of entrapping pedophiles who go and chat online with this animated being who looks real. And then the other side of that is, if you are of the view that pedophilia is a sexual preference, is the availability of artificial partners in that endeavour, I don't know the politically correct way of saying it, is that actually something, is it a gateway drug, or is it something that could be used to remove victims? I find this a fascinating area. Looked at regulation across a number of places and different approaches. So look, let's face it, they don't actually pay me all that much to do this. The best part of doing it is me getting to engage with you guys and learn something myself. So the more interesting stuff is that you do, you'll probably find the more interested I'll be, and the more support you'll get from me along the way. We'll go from there. So I just want you to think about it. Don't be limited. Scary, I know, but don't be limited. Okay, so these are your objectives, actually. This is probably the thing to really have a look at and just sort of tick off, because at the end of the day, how I mark is very much based on the objectives. So I will go back and see, have you actually achieved those things? Now, for some of you who aren't lawyers, applying the law to complex situations might sound particularly scary, but I will be taking into account where you come from and how you're doing that. And I think this is a really, really exciting opportunity for you to get your heads into the lawyer space. So people in business are constantly, calling us lawyers the go slow department, the department of no. And so actually, I think one of the things I'd like to see you take away from this, and I have the privilege of teaching a couple of subjects that have law students and non-law students in them, is I'd like you to start thinking about how you will get legal advice in the future, how to identify what a legal problem is and how to ask for the advice in a meaningful way. Okay, written reports. So your first deliverable, the scope, and your final deliverable will use these 3 core criteria. So 10% on your writing, your presentation, your referencing, the technical stuff. I mentioned it earlier, because we've got both law and non-law students in this class, the law students, some of you might be very pleased to know you don't have to use HL3 if you don't want to. You can use RMIT Harvard, and that's fine. I don't mind which you use, you just have to make sure you properly acknowledge all of your sources in a consistent way. 40% will go to research. In your first assignment, what that really means is that you will be putting up a plan that shows what research you're going to do and how you're going to make sense of it. And half of your mark goes to the discussion, the insight, the articulation of the issues, the identification of a solution. Participation, the scary one, or the fun one. And the way I see it, participation is made up of a number of different things. Elephant in the room is frequency. Lots of you, well, there are people who are still not here. Lots of you won't be here all the time. I get that, that's fine, but while you are here, I want you to be here, not half somewhere else. The quality of your participation means a lot more than the actual just fronting up and looking in my direction. Participation is also around the listening, particularly to each other. And it's about the actual contributions that you make. So there are a couple of different ways that you can contribute. I will be keeping some handwritten notes as I go, and I'm going to get you to all introduce yourselves so I can make a list and make sure that I don't mess you up, because I do that, don't I, to you? I've got, like, I know your name, but I'll still associate you with a whole different person from time to time, so I'm going to try and stop doing that with you because it's not the first time. I did this morning. So what are these ways? I'm going to be observing what you're doing and taking some notes as I go. That's probably the least. And last year when I did the assessment, I only went and looked at those notes when my other assessment came up with results that I thought, that's a bit odd. Didn't actually achieve. Now, why did I get results that I thought were just a bit odd? All of the other ways that I collect data for participation, I want to do it essentially anonymously. So we're going to use 2 tools. One is Canvas. Now, in the Canvas, at the end of each day, there is a learning reflection. Okay, it's due 24 hours, I think, after the class. What I'm really asking you to do is write a very short piece. I'm not looking for a lot, but just basically is your key takeaways from the day. The other thing that we have is this Go Soapbox tool, which you can access online. So it's rmit.gosoapbox.com. Each day there will be a different code. Code is not terribly hard to work out. It is the course code for the subject, a space, the current year, and then the day. Today is 1. It will not surprise you that tomorrow will be 2. I think you'll see the pattern really quickly. So basically what that allows you to do, when you go in, it will ask you for your name. Don't give it your name, give it your student number. Okay, so it's not completely anonymous. Obviously, I and anybody else who's in there can go and into Gmail, type in S and the number and work out who you are. I'm not going to do that. I have better things to do with my time. If other people in the room are doing that, that's because what you're saying is really awesome and they want to be your friend, or they think you're hilarious. They are really the only options. So I want to do this right now. I want you to go in and find this tool on your phone or otherwise. And what I want you to do is log in with your student number. And I want you to just leave a comment about whether you want me to give you slides in advance or not. Or just how I'm going. Do you like my shirt? just so we can work out if there are any troubles logging on. Now, I will, when we have guest speakers, I will tell them that you're doing this because they might think that you're just playing with your phones instead of listening to them. Yep. Doesn't seem to be working. So, okay, let's. Oh, is it .com.au, is it? Oh, that could be me. Try that. Can you just try that?
Yeah.
There's no way the tech is going to work right for me. It's just.
Go soapbox.it.edu.au.
Have I got it around the wrong way there?
Yeah, it's, yeah.
So you can see here that people can, you can vote for something. You can vote something up. Now, that's really useful. The one thing that you need to know if you're being strategic about sharing your marks or getting marks is I have actually no idea who votes up or down. I only know that something has been voted up or down. So when I'm looking at participation overall, then what I'm seeing is that, somebody, Lauren here, has made some amazing comment, or I should say student 12345 has made some amazing comment that everybody thought was, lots of people have voted up and said it's really interesting. So it is actually a good way of supporting your colleagues and making it clear what you believe in and coming up with something, putting your energies in coming up with something original or different and having it as a conversation. And again, as you are also this time round, you've got your little reflection, you've got the opportunity to say, like people kept getting in there quicker than me to say these things that I thought this and that and I agreed with this but I would have worded that differently or something like that. I don't mind. What I'm looking for is evidence that you participated, right? That's what it's about. Okay. Well, it is 11 o'clock. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-15 minute break. I'm not sure how close coffee is, if anybody. Oh, really?
I go to Mr. Toll in the library.
Mr. Toll next to the library, is it open?
Yeah.
It's open? So I'm not sure how people feel about whether they need long enough to go and get coffee or something like that. I'm happy to give you 20 minutes as I get myself sorted. And when we come back, in fact, I'm not going to have the screen on for now anyway. What I want to do is start a conversation about the different topic areas that might be available for you to think about a project. But in the meantime, I'd like you guys to think and talk to each other as well about what kind of areas might interest you as big headline areas so we can start doing that. And I unashamedly, content in this course will move and shift to match the projects and the topics that are interesting to you. Because at the end of the day, most law subjects you law students will do, you'll be learning specific laws that deal in a particular way and apply to many, many different industries. What we're going to do here is pick an industry or an approach and look at a breadth of laws that might apply and how they apply. And you can have as much focus into the stuff that interests you as you like. That's the plan anyway. All right, so what are we thinking? 20 past? Is there enough time to have coffee, walk, get out in the sun, please?
Yeah.
Okay, what I will do is I've got a key, you can leave your computers here, I can lock the room and force you outside.
Can you run us through how to use Canvas after this?
Yeah, I thought that's another thing we might do because I'm going to be making that part up as I go along a little bit as well, and I'm interested in seeing what you guys see. So, hopefully we'll get that started. I will lock the room. I'll make sure I'm the last one out as I just shut down the recording here. Oh, that's right. And then I'll also make sure we introduce ourselves. Oh, there's so much to do.